This is strange. I have never seen this before. I don't know if anybody else has. I guess it's normal. Maybe they're just putting it on for legal reasons. But it says, when I went to go live, it said the content of this meeting is being sent to a third party, obviously. By staying in this meeting, you consent to sharing your information, including audio and video. Users with access to the third party service can watch or share content with others, which must be the YouTube, but I've never seen that pop up.
Neither.
I said, got
Can we,
it.
can
Yeah,
we say,
something,
yes, that's our
something
intent?
changed on mine too. I don't know, and I don't know what it is.
Brent, do you want this to be 1 and 2 for conclusion, or do you want it to
Sure.
be 8?
1 and 2 or A and B or
Okay.
Say, Brent, while we're waiting, could you tell me the formula from going from observed to actual and actual back to observed,
yeah, so
please? Thank you.
if you're taking observed, so let's just say 4,140 observed years from Adam to 27 AD. So you're taking
Okay.
observed years, you want to say, well, I wonder how many prophetic years that would be. You take the observed number, 4,140, you divide that by 69, and then you times that by 70. And then you end up with 4,200 prophetic years. If you went the other way, you just do the
Okay.
opposite. So your 4,200 prophetic years, you divide by 70 and then times by 69. So 4,200 divided by 70 times 69 would be 4,140. Because every 69 years, there's a difference of just over 5 days per year. So
Right.
every 69 years, you add one more, like you fill in that 360-day cycle. So it's exactly every
Right.
69 years. It's a difference between you add one more year. So
I think the difference you're talking about is the difference between a 360-day year and a 365-day year,
yes,
right?
so
Yes.
69 observed years is 70 prophetic years, and that's that difference.
Thank you,
between
Brent.
Yeah, that's the difference between 360 days versus 365.217 days. So that's why it's pretty incredible when you think about the prophecy of Daniel and other ones of like 69 sevens and stuff like that. So when did you want me to start, Sandy?
It's on everywhere, so you can go right ahead.
Oh, okay. A little drink here. Excuse me. Good morning, everybody. And it is May 4th, and the Bible Explorations TV group just got back from the camp. This just ended a couple of days ago. And during the camp, I did a 7-part series. Each day, chapter 1, chapter 2 of the series. And then at the end, said that I would come back today, this Sabbath, and do a conclusion. So kind of a little bit of a bonus conclusion, which would be in 2 parts today. The first part right now, and then the second part in an hour from now at 11. And basically, it just gives us a chance to kind of pull a few things together. And, basically what we established in the first, we're going to look at not only what we've seen, but why we've seen it and why it matters to us today and why it's important, why the covenant code is important. So we established, first of all, in the very first chapter that there is a difference between a covenant and a contract. The main difference is the contract terminates, and it can be, and once it terminates, it can terminate for default or any other reasons. It can terminate just because it's been fulfilled. But a covenant doesn't. A covenant is everlasting. A covenant's intended to be transformational. It's intended to be relational, and it doesn't terminate upon fulfillment. It goes from one fulfillment to the next. So, in other words, the Sabbath day, it wasn't just 7 days and then it's it. That's it. Now we'll have a new contract for a new set of time. It goes from the fulfillment of the seventh day to the observance of a new set of 7 days. So it continues. It doesn't change, and that's important when you're looking at the worship pattern that Jesus, or that we were given through Moses and instructed in the book of Revelation to go back and observe that pattern, because there's a lot of confusion because of how corrupted the worship services have become. A lot of confusion about well, the seventh day was just for the Jews, or different what's nailed to the cross, what's not. So we just started building on the fact that A, it's a covenant, and we proved that. B, the covenant was that God would make man in the image and likeness of God, and they'd walk together in harmony in this covenant relationship. And in that covenant relationship, everything that God had created from day one all the way to Adam and Eve would be the inheritance of man. And so that on day 6, man was created, male and female. On day 7, God declared his work completed. And he created a holy day with his presence in it. And that was the first day that man, as male and female, walked together with God, the Sabbath day that memorialized all of creation. And we also found out that there's a particular member of the Godhead that was talked about in chapter 2, which was the Lord. He was the one that had, which breathed into Adam, who took Eve, took the man and woman, separated them, made them one of nature, but two in personality, two in people. And he brought them together in a covenant, said you should cling together in one flesh. And so we went through that, and we went through what happened when man heard an opposing testimony and rejected God's covenant. Well, if it was a contract, that would have been it. But because it was a covenant, in a covenant relationship, the stronger is obliged to help the weaker, but only if the weaker wants that help, wants to remain in the covenant. So God, first of all, judged the serpent, and he basically cursed he condemned the serpent, because you have done this. You're not. He tried to create sort of body shields with Adam and Eve. If I can make them sin, then God can't come after me without going after them. But no, he was judged separately. He was condemned for what he did. He couldn't expect a benefit from making them sin or causing them to sin. But with a man and a woman, he told them what their cost was going to be, what the consequences, but also that he himself would redeem them, that he would be the strong, the strength between the woman and the serpent, and between her seed and the serpent's seed, and that at some point in time, that seed in particular would crush the skull of the serpent. And so God would always have a light in the world. The world wouldn't be without a light. It would always be in the seed of the woman until the specific seeds came. And so he did a ceremony, and he entered Adam and Eve into the covenant of redemption, where he covered them, where he covered their shame, gave them a covering, and he forgave them and passed over their sin, so that they could move forward with their covenant relationship. didn't declare them not guilty, just gave them a covering and a hope. And it was the same covenant, just they had erred by not believing the word of God, and they would be saved by having faith in the word of God. So we went through several things, and we saw how it all pointed to Jesus, all the prophecy, everything else pointed to Jesus. Jesus came in fulfillment of the flesh, in fulfillment of that covenant. His disciples recorded in the whole New Testament the fulfillment of that covenant. The Old Testament talked about, the foretold the covenant, and the New Testament talks about the fulfillment of the covenant. And then once that covenant had been fulfilled, the covenant of paying that price, paying that atonement. Atonement means paying a price for somebody else. So if my son hits somebody else's car, I can come and say, look, I'm sorry, we don't need to get the police involved. Let me give you $500 to fix your car as atonement for my son's mistake. And so it's always a cost to it. It's always for somebody else. But that atonement also means at one-ment, like having something that joins you both. A mediator joins you both, takes the two parties together. But in Christ, it's the love that Christ had for us and for his Father, and the love for the Father for Christ. If we have that same love for Christ, then he becomes the thing that brings us and God back together. Our love for what he did for us and for the Father. So anyway, he paid that price. But that wasn't the end of the fulfillment. That was part of the fulfillment. That was paying the price. He would return because now he'd gotten back the inheritance. He would return at a time of God's choosing to then distribute that inheritance back to man. But there'd be, at the same time, all of evil would be destroyed. That would be the end for Satan, etc. So, long story short, as we went through and we saw even Paul saying that no, there's still time to enter that rest until he returns. There's time to enter that rest. Jesus said when he gave the toast, "I will not drink again from this cup until I return." So there was this from that time to this time is all one period called the end time, but there's been different generations from then till now. And we saw in the book of Revelation of Jesus Christ, chapter 10, that there's a period in where the seventh trumpet was about to sound, and the time would be no more. And in that period, there was the last generation was called to prophecy again, and to prophecy to kings, nations, tongues. Just as John had been part of the first generation with the apostles, the seventh generation, the generation between the sixth and the seventh in the Revelation was to do the same thing. And they're only given one instruction. The instruction they were given was to go and measure the tabernacle of God. And as we did that, we looked at the very first thing that we were given was the first feast day we were given, or appointed time was the Sabbath. And the first our article we were given in that pattern from Moses was the Ark of the Covenant and the mercy seat. So we looked at the mercy seat and we saw that there was dimensions given that mercy seat. There was also observations given, and that's where the blood would be sprinkled once a year in the most holy place, on the most holy vessel, by the most holy high priest. And that was to make atonement on that mercy seat. And we were given a dimension of 1.5 by 2.5 for that mercy seat. And we saw as we went through there that between Adam, Noah, and Jesus was an exact fulfillment in timeline of that same thing. The time from Adam to Noah, to the ark, 1.5 times of that was from the ark to Jesus, and 2.5 times the time was from Adam to Jesus. But we also noticed that there was three, that Adam, Noah, and Jesus shared something in the redemption story, in that they were all associated with judgment. Adam in the garden, Noah at the flood, and Jesus at the cross. So then we started to add um, two other people to this, to observe this pattern. And we weren't just adding anybody. This whole thing is about the covenant. And so we added Enoch because he was the seventh generation, and he fulfilled that Sabbath, that same Sabbath. He walked with God, and God took him. He's obviously a key person in the fulfillment of this pattern. But we also added Moses because he's the mediator of the covenant. He's the one that was given this pattern. And we saw the same thing. We saw that this the same pattern, 1.5 times 2.5, existed when you put 5 people in there. So now we had Adam, Enoch, Noah, Moses, and Jesus. So that's how we got to this point. And I want to show you hopefully something very special today in the conclusion. So this is the inside, looking, if you're standing in the holy place, looking towards the most holy place. And you see the veil there with a cherubim on there. So that's the view we have right here. And we were talking last time too, where we left off was on when we left the ark, and we started to look at the boards, the tabernacle boards, so looking at other parts of this tabernacle. So let me just summarize from there. So we began the previous chapter noting that Adam, Noah, and Jesus shared a unique recognition of the covenant. Each represented a timeline in the covenant associated with God's judgment. Adam in the garden, Noah at the flood, Jesus at the cross. In these 3 reference points, we were also able to observe the fulfillment of the mercy seat atonement given to Moses in the covenant pattern that he was not to deviate from. Specifically, we observed their historic timeline was an exact match to the pattern given for the mercy seat dimensions. Adam to Noah, 1,656 years. Ark to Jesus, 2,484 years. Adam to Jesus, 4,140. And the dimensions being 1.5, 60.1, and 2.5, 60.25, 6 and 2.5. With these 3 reference points, we clearly observed a 1.5 times 2.5. It's not just the dimensions, but also the picture. You know, what happened at that 4140? What did Jesus' ministry about? It was to perform that very atonement that was given in the pattern to happen. The initial fulfillment of the covenant promise in the garden in Genesis 3:15 of the seed of the woman. Jesus being that seed of the woman. We then observe the same timeline with the addition of 2 others that the Lord chose in furtherance of this same covenant. Enoch, the 7th from Adam, who walked in covenant fulfillment with God, and whom it is written that he pleased God and that God took him. Moses, the one chosen by God to deliver his people from Egyptian slavery, and once delivered to be the mediator of the covenant in his generation. In so doing, receiving from God this pattern of days and ways of the covenant blueprint of God given for our observation. In adding Enoch and Moses to the original timeline, we observed the same 1.5 times 2.5 mercy seat timeline pattern relationship that we'd observed originally in Adam, Noah, and Jesus. As we began to move outward from the ark to observe the 46 tabernacle boards, we witnessed the relationship to the 6th generation from Adam, born 460 years from the creation of Adam. We also saw the same pattern observed in the ark, is also observed in the tabernacle boards. So we looked back and said that Jared was born 460 years from Adam. And in the tabernacle boards we looked at, there's supposed to be 20 on one side, 20 on the other side, 6 on the west side. So there's 46 boards, and it's standing up to a height of 10 cubits. Each board having 2 feet. You know, the word tenions that's used in the Bible, some translations actually say feet, but tenions is appendages. It's sometimes used for hands, sometimes used for feet, but it's an appendage of something. So each board having 2 tenions, and they're standing on silver sockets of redemption. So that's where they slot into. So you got 46 boards times 10 height, and so you have a total of 460 is the board height, and each one is 1.5 cubits wide. So that's 690. So if we take the same thing with the tabernacle boards that we did prior, 690 times the 1.5, which is the arc width, equals 1035. Times our arc height is 15,525. And if we do the same thing, 690 times 1.5 of the arc width, which is 2.5, we get 25,875. Now, what's important about those two numbers? Well, 25,875 is exactly, let me just move this up a little bit here, exactly the amount of years from Adam to Moses, 258.75 years. And 15525 is exactly the amount of years from Moses to Jesus, 15525. Now we're looking at the boards, right? And then if we look at hours of the day, because remember, we showed that all temples had some element of time. They're all like, most of them were faked. They used the observation of the sun and the moon, and they knew what day of year a certain star would show up, or when the sun would be in a certain quadrant, and they'd set up their temples so that a star would appear or a ray of sun and shine on their most holy thing at that time to try and fake that the gods are with them. Well, so there's always an element of time, is what I'm saying. So the 46 boards times 24 hours equals 1104, times the arc width would be 1656, exactly the same number we came before from Adam to creation, times 2.5 again would be 4140. So if we take the 46 boards, which is the same 1104 times the board width, then because the boards were 1.5 as well, you get 1656 times 1.5 is 2484. So even when we looked at the tabernacle boards, all these same numbers appear. 1035 right here, 1525, and 1035, that's the time from Enoch to the flood. 15525, 25875, 1656, 2484, 4140. The same numbers that we looked at when we looked at just the biblical timeline. We looked at Adam to Noah being 1656 times 1.5 is 2484 times 2.5 being 4140. We just get a few more details when we add Enoch and we add Moses, but those details show up in the tabernacle. And if they show up in the tabernacle, remember the tabernacle was given to Moses way back here, 25,875. In order to have a pattern, you have to have at least 3 reference points, and it has to, A, B, and C, and then the next one should follow with that same pattern. Well, if Moses got the pattern here, how would he know when Jesus was going to be born? If he was going to try and fake this tabernacle to be exactly like this, he would have to know when Jesus was going to be born in order to fill in this 15,525. Plus, he was born then. He couldn't control when he was born. That's when he was born. And in relationship to all this time beforehand, that's when he was born. Like, none of this can be faked. It's just, these are the numbers. These are the numbers of the timeline. These are the numbers of the ark and the observation we're given the pattern. These are the numbers of the tabernacle boards. So the truth is, the reasons we were able to make these same observations is because this whole pattern given to Moses is entirely about the fulfillment of the covenant through the Lord Jesus Christ. This pattern given for our observance is both prophetic of these acts of the Lord and a memorial to them. So at this point in Moses' time, it was a memorial to everything that happened beforehand, but it's also prophetic of everything that would happen afterwards. This, therefore, as we observed even more in adding Enoch and Moses, we should expect to observe even more as we add Abraham and David to our tabernacle study. The Lord personally entered each one of these 2 men into his covenant. So let's look at the covenants. So we have Adam, The first was in creation, walking with God, made in God's image, celebrated on that first Sabbath day when they walked together with the Lord. Then you had the judgment in the garden, and it became redemption. And so he entered them, he covered them with skins. They entered into redemption. So Noah, the Lord entered Noah. You can only enter into something that already exists. So even when Adam was entered in, it already existed. It was announced in heaven and man's creation. But this covenant continues. It doesn't change in terms of man and God. It's just God has to act on man's behalf to fulfill His word. Abraham, he was the chosen seed. It was to be the seed of the woman. God's plans advancing here. Now I've picked the man who's a direct descendant of Adam and Eve, but who is through him the seed's going to come. Moses, he's the mediator of the covenant and the fulfillment. He told Abraham, "Your people will be in slavery 400 years," and Moses records that exactly 430 years. The Exodus. What's interesting is Moses' Exodus was 40 years earlier. He actually left at 390 years, but nobody followed him. But he did leave 390 years. He believed that that's the time he was supposed to leave, and God called him back out of the wilderness when he went back to redeem his people. But Moses was entered into the covenant. David is the king of the covenant people. God entered into covenant with David and said, "You'll always have an heir on the throne." And of course, Jesus is the seed of the woman. He is the fulfillment of the covenant. And from his time until the end time, it's all about his time. So we're going to add Abraham and David and see what we find. So Abraham, the Lord called to leave his country and his kindred and go to a land that he would show him, and promised or covenanted to make him a great nation, bless him, make his name great, bless them that bless him, curse them that make curse him. Abraham was 75 years old when he left Haran with his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and the substance and souls that they had acquired, and traveled to Shechem in Canaan. Abraham was to be patriarch of the seed of the woman, and Isaac the first fulfillment of the covenant promise. Now, I'm sorry. We have this account in Genesis 22, 1-18. God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham, here I am," he replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about." So I'll show you when to get there. Now, it's interesting that mountain in Moriah is exactly where Abraham went, is the foundation stone for the whole temple. The temple was built on that same stone that God showed Abraham. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and saddled his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offerings, he set out for the place God told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. Notice it was the 3rd day. He said to his servants, "Stay here with the donkeys while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, then we'll come back to you." Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, just as the cross was placed on Jesus. The wood was placed on Isaac. Isaac carried it. And Abraham himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them went together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father?" "Yes, my son." Abraham replied, "The fire and the wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the two of them went on together. As they reached the place that God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there, and he arranged the wood on it. Then he bound his son Isaac, and he laid him on the altar, on top of the wood. And he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Here I am, he replied. Do not lay a hand on the boy, he said. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son. Abraham looked up there in the thicket, and he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, the Lord will provide. And to this day it is said, on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time, said, so here's covenant. I swear by myself, there's no higher authority, declares the Lord, that because you have done this, and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you, and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and as the sands on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring, all nations of earth will be blessed, because you have a baby. Unlike Adam, who clung to his flesh, Abraham was willing to sacrifice his flesh. It says later in Scripture that Abraham believed that if God took him, Isaac, that he would raise him back up again. So I'm going to try something here. Hopefully it works. I'm going to try and play a video. It's about 6 minutes long, and then come back to here. So I'm not never done this before, so let's hope it works. So far, so good. Wish I could get the screen.
I'm not sure if it'll work that way because you're sharing your Word document.
What's that?
I'm not sure if it'll work that way because you're sharing your Word document.
Is the video coming up or no?
No, nothing.
Nothing? Oh, really?
We don't see
Okay, let me
anything.
try. What's that?
We don't see anything, just your Word document.
You'd
Okay,
have
let
to
me
share
try.
that screen.
Yeah, you have to share a different screen.
Okay, let me do it that way then. Um, I'll get out of this view. Let's see here. Okay, and I will go to go to here. Go to here. Okay, 1 second. Escape full screen. Hold on. Sorry about this. Okay, now I should be able to. Okay, can you see that?
No,
Okay, let me try this again.
you may have to stop sharing and then reshare that one and then go back.
Okay, stop share. Okay, now I'm going to share. You see that?
Yes,
Yeah,
Okay, good. Okay, you can see that?
Yes,
Okay. All right, we're gonna start over here. Okay.
there's supposed to be sound with that video.
You don't have any sound?
no, just reading the words.
Okay.
you have
Unfortunately,
it muted. You see the little, yeah, you have it muted, that's why.
no, it
No.
doesn't matter.
It still didn't work.
Okay,
Okay. You have to just read along, I guess. I'll give you a little bit of. So this is talking about the covering right over the tabernacle. It's showing how they're looped together, each curtain. So these, so see how it's, I'll just pause it there. So those 10 curtains, which are 28 by 4 each, or 112 cubits each. First of all, they're joined together, 5 and 5, and they're all made to be one curtain, with a little bit hanging over the front, a little bit over the back. But that's the first covering of the tabernacle, and its total measurement is 1120. So we'll just move forward a little bit, and I'll stop in a few other places. So these ones are the ones on top of it. So you have this cherubim. So when you're inside the tabernacle, if you're looking up, you would only see that blue and purple cherubim designed covering. These ones are meant to protect that covering. So there's goat's hair, there's ram skin dyed red, there's another kind of a badger skin. So they're all the outward protection. We'll talk about them some other time. I'm just focused on the other one first, but just to show you how it's all structured, we'll just play through this. So it's the same width, but they're 2 cubits longer. So you take the 5 and the 6. Now it's interesting because you take the 5 and the 6. This is going to be the cover on top, and the dimensions of this add up to 1320. But it tells you to take this last curtain and fold it in half. So when you fold this last curtain in half, it actually is dimensionless 1260 instead of 1320. So an interesting point, but nothing we're going to talk about right now. So they're joined together to make one curtain again. So that's the outside covering. This hangs over the back side. And it hangs to the front here as well. So here's the boards. Do you see the tenions? Each board has 2 tenions or 2 feet. So they're side by side, and each one has 2. Each board has 2. So see, there's 20 boards and there's 40 sockets of silver because each socket has a tinion, so they fit into these silver sockets. So you on this one side you got 20 boards, then you have 40 sockets. Again, we're not going to be talking about the sockets today, but just pay attention to the tinions and the boards. Notice how it says for his two tinions or his two appendages, it calls the boards his. So there's 20 on the south side, now there's 20 on the north side. Actually, I'm going to go back. I want to show you something here that I missed out showing you. Uh, so, okay, see right here? See how there's a gap? So you got 6 boards on this side. So we have the 20 boards, that's 40. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But see how you can see into the sanctuary from here? And from there, you have the same amount of space. That's because 6 times 1.5 is 9 cubits. And we know that the sanctuary was 10 cubits inside, 10 by 10 by 10. So this is where these corner boards come in. Because remember, they're 1.5 wide. 1.5 wide. Here you have a gap of a half a cubit, another gap of a half a cubit. So that would make it 10 cubits. So what is a half a cubit? It's a third of the 1.5. So a third of the board covers the inside, the rest is outside. Same with this, a third of the board on the inside. So really what you have is 6 boards plus 0.333 of this board and 0.333 of this board. So it's really 6.6666 boards. And 6.666 times 1.5 is 10. But it's important to see the role of these corner boards. You have 46, but you have really 46.66 boards to complete the sanctuary. These bars are all on the outside of the tabernacle, so we're not concerned about that at this time either. We will in another lesson, but we're looking for what's inside the tabernacle. So here's that veil with the cherubim on it, and it's hung also because it's 10 by 10 by 10. It's hung exactly 6 2/3 boards from the wall. So it's, again, it's 10 by 10 by 10, but just notice it's that beautiful purple and blue, and the cherubins are guarding the way right there. If you looked up from inside of here, you would see the same covering all across the top, the same colors and the same cherubim design along the top as well. So this is the exact same material, that blue and purple scarlet. The only thing that's missing from this one is the cherubim. And the cherubim are the gate to get into the whole tabernacle. It's the same material, same color, but on the gate to get into the tabernacle, there's also cherubim. So this is the only one that doesn't have cherubim, but they're all related. They're all this. You got the 3 curtains. You got the one at the gate. You got this to get into the holy place, and the most holy place, and the covering. They're all the same material, but this one's missing cherubim. So, oops. Hold on a second. Back, be back there in 1 second here. So we're not used to this this technical stuff. So I'm gonna go to here again. Okay, go back to share screen. Find the screen I want, go back to here. Share. Okay, are we all back?
That's it.
Yay. Okay, that took a little bit more time than I expected, but it was okay. We got 2 parts today. So so let's look at that first cover, that one we saw on the top now. We saw that it was 28 by 4, which is 112, times 10, which is 1120. You saw the cherubim on it, blue, purple, fine linen, as with the gate, and the veil, the most holy. The cherubim guard the way to the tree of life. Remember right at the initial covenant, right when it had been made, then he put the man out, and he put cherubim to guard the way to tree of life. I want to make this observation: 112 hours is 4.666 days. 112 divided by 44 is 46666. 1120 hours is 46.6666 days. And what did we just look at with the tabernacle? We saw 46 boards, but we saw a third of this board and a third of this board to make the inside 46.666, and the remainder of these 2 boards is the outside. So you see that the boards, testify to the same thing that the covering testifies to. There's 40 boards in the north, 6 in the south, plus 0.33 or half a cubit of each corner, 46.666. And when we started off, somebody asked me, what's the difference between prophetic day and observed day? Well, if you take 46 days and you divide it by 6.9 and then times by 7, you'll also get 46.666. In other words, 46.66 days, prophetic days, is equal exactly to 46 observed days. So in this pattern, you have both the 46 for the observed days and you have the prophetic days. And that's something we'll talk more about in the future. But I'm just showing you that these are actual days. You can't change these numbers. This is 1120 is 46.66 days. And we when this all goes back to this 1120. So we see that Abraham was born, according to our chart we showed before, 2166 BC. Isaac born, and notice that Noah lived for the first 58 years of Abraham's life. Noah was still alive, and remember I said God would always have a light in the world, would never go without a light. So Noah, lived during Abraham's earlier years. Anyway, the birth of Isaac was 2066. Then we go back to our timeline of David and Solomon and stuff like that, and we see that the temple was consecrated 946. So if you take 2066 minus 946, it's exactly 1120 years. It also is exactly 1512 years after the flood. But also, Abraham's 100 years before. So from Abraham to here is 1220 years. And what is this veil, the measurements of that veil between the holy and most holy place? It's exactly 100. It's 10 by 10. So when you if I go to that picture again, and you're looking at this picture, this veil is 100. The covering is 1120. The board's 46666. This place, this most holy place, is where the atonement happens. And just as this 1120 is the covering, remember, you can't get a more accurate picture of what the Lord did in covering our sins than you can through Isaac and Abraham, your son, your only son. And Abraham's honored at this door. This 100 here represents Abraham. The 1120 over here represents Isaac, the covering. All of them represent Jesus, because Jesus was with Isaac and Abraham, and he honors them. But we know that all of them pointed towards Jesus, but Jesus also pointed towards all of them. He spoke of Adam, he spoke of Abraham, he spoke of all of his covenant people. And in fact, he says, I am the Lord I am the God of Abraham, of Isaac, of Jacob. How can I be their God if they're dead? Because I'm also the resurrection and the life. So this pattern in here of 100 here and 1120 here goes back to this covering made for Adam and Eve. It said the Ark of the Covenant and the cherubim adorning its mercy seat is housed between the cherubim veil at its front, this cherubim at the front, and the cherubim covering overhead. Remember, there's cherubim on the mercy seat. Just as the Lord told Abraham, the Lord will provide the sacrifice. While the Lord is the fulfillment of the covenant, the Lord also honored his covenant people in their calling, and they were seen in the observation of this tabernacle pattern. The promise of the fulfillment of the seed of woman, given in Genesis 3:15, is most clearly observed in the covenant promise to Abraham and his seed. The Lord made a covering for Adam and Eve. That fulfillment is foretold beyond the veil, underneath the covering atop the mercy seat between the cherubim. So that's when we're looking at the entering Abraham into the covenant. Where is he honored? Well, he's honored along with Isaac throughout the whole tabernacle. It's when it was built, and the covering and the veil. Let me show you something else really special about this covering. If I had nothing else, no other, not even the ark. Well, no, let's just say that. If I only have the ark and the covering, so I got the ark here, and I've got the covering. You would have the exact same numbers, because you'd have the prophetic numbers of all the fulfillment. Because 1.5, which is the breadth of the ark, times 1120 is 1680 prophetic years from Adam to the ark of Noah. If you say 1.5 times 1.5, so the height times the breadth, times 1120, that's 2,520 prophetic years from the ark of Noah to Jesus, which is the same as 2484 observed. If you take 1.5 times 2.5, which is the breadth times the width times 1120, it equals 4,200 prophetic years from Adam to Jesus, or 4,140 observed. So, and then if I take all of the dimensions, 1.5 times 2.5 times 1.5 times 1120, you get 6,300 prophetic years, which is the same as 6210 or 6210 observed, which is our generation. That falls in our generation. In fact, that's the maximum, right there, 6,300, and we'll talk about that later on. But we're actually in 2027, 3 years from now, that last stone is laid, and that we're only 70 years short of that, and this time doesn't it won't be till the end of that time, for reasons we've talked a little bit about, but too much to get into now. But that's the maximum time. But that covering represents Jesus. But it's so significant, that 1120, that you can apply it to every one of these dimensions of the ark without anything else and still get those same numbers. Which brings us to David. How much time do we have here? It's 10:55. I think we might be better off. How do I do? I'm showing up here. Yeah. What I'm going to do is I'm going to end here. So we'll pick it up in part 2. But we've seen Isaac. We've seen, and remember when we're looking at this covenant, we're looking at Adam, Noah, Abraham. So Abraham, and Isaac, obviously, the fulfillment. We looked at Moses, so we just have David to look at as well. Let me see if I have something else to share with you here. No, we'll do that later. Okay, I'm going to end it here. Sorry, it's a little bit scrambly. I've never done that technical thing before. Now I know how to do it next time. Well, here's what I wanted to show you. So notice in the covenant that there's always the person entered in the covenant, and then some fulfillment of that, at least a partial fulfillment of that, through a son. In Adam, it was the 7th, it was Enoch. In Noah, it was Seth, because the generation we hear from Noah to Abraham was given under Seth's line. Abraham, it's Isaac. Moses, Joshua. David, Solomon. So there's usually a connection between the person entered in the covenant and a partial fulfillment of the covenant. So anyway, we see in Abraham and Isaac, we see the seed of the woman. This is a fulfillment of the promise, going into becoming a nation through Abraham, becoming the light of the world and getting closer to the fulfillment of that promise. So I'll says new share. I'll stop it there. And I guess, Sandy, we can end it there and take a little break.
Okay, and those that are watching on YouTube, I will stop it and start it for the second part. But that was extremely fascinating. That's
That is so awesome.
got a lot of proof there. It just goes on and on and on, and he's coming soon. We better be ready.
Do you want me to answer a few questions now or just save that for
Go
the
right
part?
ahead. People can ask, do whatever, and I'll go start that back up.
Well, give me a chance to, don't start back up until, well, I'll save the questions for the second part then. Let me take a break, get a proper drink, and then in 5 minutes, I'll let you know and we'll start her back up.
Okay.
Everybody got 5 minutes per potty break. I will,
I wrote down the information for the link and I was